Hello everyone, Forest Focus as a new look Nottingham Forest look to shock the Premier League again. New signings and a new start in the win against Brentford, but how far can they go this season? Joining me to discuss all that and more, it's great to welcome two friends of the show. First of all, Harrogate Town goalkeeper James Belshaw. Morning, Belly, how are you?
Yeah, all good, thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me on again.
Good to have you on. You were at the game on Sunday. You were moonlighting in the press box with the Guardian. Was this a bit of career future proofing, or just wanted to blag your way in for free?
That's the only way to get a ticket for Forest these days, isn't it? To blag your way in, but no, it's media may be a potential avenue that I consider going into after football. So yeah, I was like a little work experience kid for the day, just seeing how all the media people do things. But no, great atmosphere and good to be there.
What did you make of it? Just out of curiosity, the media side of it on the day.
Yeah, interesting. Seeing how, obviously I was with the Guardian, but kind of seeing how the structure to their day, when the reports have to be in, kind of the timeline that they have to follow, and then being in the press conferences afterwards was probably the most interesting bit to see Keith Andrews and Nuno and kind of listen to what they said straight after the game was really interesting. But no, everyone at Forest looked after me really well. So nice food, bags of sweets as well, cheesecake at half time. So
he's a proper journalist already. Good stuff. Talking of press timelines, fresh. I don't know how fresh you are, but Dan Storey, fresh from Leeds v Everton last night. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all good. It was nice to watch another away Premier League team who I thought might be around Forest's position this season, stinking the place out and looking really underwhelming.
Are you surprised by any of these teams? West Ham are probably the other one that spring to mind. Promoted teams beating established teams. Are you surprised by anything you've seen so far after 1 week?
I think, given where I am now, I think I'd probably flip it round and say was more surprised by Forest. I think there were a group of teams who I thought might be fairly undercooked at the start of the season, and some of them looked cooked than I thought. But Forest were the opposite. So yeah, that instantly look. It was Brentford and they were bad, but it instantly gives you a little shock.
What about, it's slightly, I mean, I don't want to talk about VAR straight away, but it's been a slightly inauspicious start for VAR around handballs. Arguably, there was one in the Forest game, there was one last night, and I thought there should have been one. Bournemouth should have had a player done for a handball as well, I thought. Is that one of the things we're going to see more this season, Dan, that people don't know the handball rule?
Yeah, I think so. And it is a handball's a weird one in that it is the least subjective feeling of the subjective rules. So they're like interfering with play. I think everyone on an offside, everyone goes, well, that kind of is open to debate, and we'll all debate it forevermore. Handball feels like it should be a bit more rigid, and yet it's not. You know, where it hits, where the arm is, how much you move it towards the ball, how far the ball's away when it's struck. They're all kind of very subjective. So I think we will see more of it. I would say in the case of Forest, and I thought Forest had a case for a penalty with the kind of the free kick handball. Like, I'm fine for us not to be talking about it, because the reality is we made it not matter, and that's what Everton didn't do on Monday night. They can talk about the decision, but they got what they deserved because they completely didn't turn up.
What did you, just talk more about Forest then, just focusing on the game, obviously. What did you make of us in, I say us and Brentford as well, Dan, because James, there's two teams involved. What did you make of it in general?
I thought that the first half Forest were excellent. I think we saw, a clear shift in Forest style of play. They want to dominate the ball a little bit more. Possession stats were up based on last year. They were in Brentford's face, and at times Brentford were forced into like a back eight defending the box, which gave Gibbs-White, which gave Elliot, which gave players like this around the box room to be able to dictate play. And to be honest, Forest were an absolute joy to watch. I think the new boy Ndoye looked sharp going forward. I think defensively there was a couple of times when Aina stepped out and Ndoye was left 1v1, and that was I think it was when Rico Henry got in and Igor Thiago's just had the block from Nico Williams. But I think overall it was a really sort of efficient performance, a dominating performance from Forest. They didn't really give Brentford a sniff, and yeah, I think the game's done at half time. Second half kind of lulled. There was a couple of chances for Forest. Brentford grabbed the game a little bit more, but without really looking threatening. And yeah, I think after one game, it's maybe too early to draw conclusions, but I was impressed by Forest, and I'd be extremely worried if I was a Brentford fan.
Yeah, that's why I'm not getting. I'm very hopeful and very excited, Dan, about the whole season. But I don't want to get too carried away because the way we played was fantastic. But can we play like that consistently? Will Nuno want to play like that consistently in terms of style and ball possession?
I think the possession is going to be a common theme. It was the highest possession Forest have had in a league win since April 2022 against West Brom in the Championship, which is remarkable, really. I know that there was an acclimatisation period in the Premier League, but we do look to be changing things up. I think the really interesting thing about that possession is that with the players we've brought in, as a manager, it's a lot easier when you're having to rotate players, which is something Nuno didn't do or have to do much last season, but he is going to this season with Thursday nights. And when you rotate players, I think it's intrinsically easier to do that when you're having more of the ball. It's kind of harder to bring in players to play really disciplined out of possession football because any lapse of concentration leads to a big chance for the opposition. So I think that's part of it. And I think pre-season, with the benefit of glorious hindsight, we're all worried about the lack of goals. I think pre-season was basically just Nuno saying, I'm going to play two up top because I want you to get a little bit crowded in midfield. And I want to see how you deal with that. Because I think when we then go back to the original formation, you'll be better for it. That's exactly what it looked like on Saturday. It looked like Gibbs-White was enjoying the space. It looked like Elliot Anderson was doing that kind of quarterback role where he picks up the ball and plays passes. Ibrahim Sagari was a revelation, and if that carries on, if the links to other midfielders has sparked him into action with a full pre-season, then that's brilliant for everyone. And it does feel like a new Forest again. And you say about the not getting excited, Matt, and I think you're absolutely right, but that feels exactly like last season, right? We started quickly and everyone was like, yeah, we don't get excited yet. And, we don't know what's around the corner. And Forest just kept on surprising us. If we keep doing that at a higher level, that's all we can ever ask for.
We've discussed the midfield at length. Sangare, fantastic. Gibbs-White, fantastic. I want to talk more about Anderson because I love talking about Elliot Anderson. And I feel like I was on the bandwagon for Elliot for England about a year ago. Well, he only just signed then, but maybe I was. I don't know. I want to talk about it more because, James, you played with him at Bristol Rovers. Could you see that level of player in him at that young age or not?
I think when he came on loan to us in the January, we were 18th in League Two and we finished third on the final day. And I think the game plan from January onwards was give the ball to Elliot, and he just terrorised League Two. He was so far and above the level. I've never played with anyone who, again, is so much better than the level that they were playing at. Did I see him going on and being what he is today? Probably, yeah. I think he always had the potential to be a top player, but on Saturday was the first time I've seen him live kind of since I'd played with him. And what you don't see when you watch TV or you watch the highlights is just how involved he is in everything that Forest do. So when Milenkovic and Marilla have the ball, you'll see Anderson peeling off into half spaces, looking to get on the ball on the half turn. But you just watch his hand movement. He's just constantly pointing. He's looking, if he's pulled out, but he sees a better pass through to Gibbs-White, he's pointing that. He's dictating play. He constantly wants the ball. I mean, his footwork, his strength, his ball recoveries. He's a complete midfielder. And you saw sort of early on, there was that passage of play where there's him, Gibbs-White, Elliot has a shot that's blocked, and he seems like he's getting that box-to-box role, doing a bit of everything, dictating from deep. And yeah, for me, I think you'd struggle to find a more complete performance over the weekend. And with him, Gibbs-White, Sangare in there, like you said, there's rumours of other signings coming in. I think out of all three of them, if you compare Elliot and Gibbs-White, I'd rather have Elliot Anderson in my team than Morgan Gibbs-White at the minute, just for what he brings to the team.
I'll ask you to expand on that in one sec, but I'll just put up a couple of charts quickly. People probably have seen this one because this is the third time I've used it, but his touch map on the right just shows how all over the pitch he was. This one shows how central he was about everything going through him, as James said. This is the pass map, and Elliot Anderson is a big red dot in the middle, basically. If people who are listening, not watching, sorry, but it shows, as James said, how everything went through him. Just expand on that point, James. Why would you have Elliot over Morgan then?
Because I think in the way Forest want to play, if you want to shift to a more possession-based style of football, you need your deep line midfield players to be able to retain the ball in tight areas, because if you want to progress the ball and you want to play forward passes, you need someone in that role that can do that. Now, Gibbs-White is, again, an outstanding player. He's probably Forest's sort of talisman, so to speak. But I just think in terms of importance of the way Forest want to play, to get on the ball from deep, it will be interesting when Forest come up against a stronger opposition who again want to dominate the ball, who will press Forest higher up, how Forest cope with that. Do they revert more to the counter-attacking style that suited them so well last year? But for me, just the way he dictated play, the way he recovers the ball, I think if you take him out of the team and you take Morgan Gibbs-White out of the team, I think you'd miss Elliot more than you'd miss Morgan Gibbs-White.
Just quickly, one more for you, James. What role positionally was he playing at Bristol Rovers, out of curiosity, when he was there?
So he was playing left of a front three, which again, as he was coming through, I think with the England youth setups, I think he was seen more as a sort of a wide forward, kind of cutting in onto his right foot. He was strong, powerful, quick, and then now he's transitioned kind of into a complete midfield player. So again, I probably didn't see that transition coming. But intelligent footballers can adapt to the role that they play in, and I think the key thing is he's an excellent footballer, but his footballing IQ is probably vastly superior to his age and to many other midfielders in the Premier League.
Tweet here. Sorry, Dan.
What I really like about him, Matt, is that, and it's something that we get told, that the reason why Thomas Tuchel is maybe not completely convinced on Morgan Gibbs-White as a starter for England is that there are times when he kind of overcomplicates things a little bit and loses the ball. There was one of those on Saturday for one of Brentford's chances, although I think Gibbs-White was fantastic on Sunday. But what sticks out to me about Anderson is his ability to spot when he needs to do the simple thing rather than the complicated or the high level technique thing. So the third goal is a perfect example of when he spots that maybe he could just play a sideways pass and Forest would get back possession and keep the ball. And it's 2-0 and you're going into half time and you think, well, that's fine, you can just manage the game. But he spots that there's a high risk opportunity to play a through ball, and it's a perfect through ball to Woody. But he also has this ability to just play the simple pass where maybe Morgan's demanding the ball every time because he always wants the ball, and Doy always wants the ball because it's his debut, and Callum always wants the ball because he wants to run at a right back. But he has this ability to just say, yeah, hang on a minute, I think this is a situation where we need to keep the ball or play simply or just manage possession or work out our positioning because we're slightly out of the back. James mentioned, Belly mentioned the IQ. That's exactly it. It's that he manages to read the game, and managers, whether it be club or international, adore those kind of players because they basically mean they have to send out 5 or 10 less of those micromanaged messages to the players on the pitch because they're doing it all themselves. They're managing the game themselves, and that's what's jumped out over the last sort of 6-7 months with Elliot, from the start of last season to now.
Just read a tweet, Dan, from your colleague Craig Hope from the Mail. Biggest takeaway from the opening PL weekend, apart from Newcastle need a striker: Thomas Tuchel should build his team around Anderson and Gibbs-White. Skillful, fun, intelligent. England needs some joy and invention. I think that might be a bit premature, but I do love it. The thing I suppose I'll ask you, respond to that if you want, obviously, but the thing I'll ask you with your Forest fan hat on is, when we came up to the Premier League and quite often in the Championship as well, it felt like a battle and a grind, and wins meant everything, but they weren't necessarily fun to obtain. To see a Forest team play like that, with James mentioned the 1-2 combination and the shot, I mean, this is the stuff we dream of, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and it's important that you go through those other stages first, because that's how you earn the right to play. If Forest, we saw from the promoted teams, particularly Southampton last year, that it is, whether it's arrogance or naivety, if you come up and just try and replicate everything you were doing in the Championship and kind of want to puff out your chest and show the Premier League that you don't need to adapt, then you'll get picked off really quickly because the step up is bigger than it's ever been. If you rely upon your strengths, you can be greater than the sum of your parts. And with Forest, that was the defensive solidity, that was grinding out, that turned into counter-attacking over time, particularly under Nuno, and it was the atmosphere at home and the home form. Now our strength can be something else. I think we can still rely on the other stuff, and we should rely on the other stuff, but now we have an option to fit things to match different opponents. And what it does more than anything for me is it slightly evaporates the nagging concern I had in the back of my mind, which was towards the end of last season, maybe teams slightly worked out how Forest were going to attack on the counter and maybe look to neutralise that threat. I don't think you can neutralise it now when you've got two midfielders who absolutely love being on the ball, and in Sangari, someone who looks better at breaking up play than he ever was. So, yeah, that's all good news.
I want to pick James's brains around goalkeeping and finishes from the game in 1 second. But just for that, a word for Trent Navigation. Sunday's game is on TV, so you can watch it at the Nav. Get down for 10 a.m. for breakfast, make a day of it. Watch the match in full on the big screens, outdoors and indoors, and then you can hang around, get a Sunday roast, get your dinner there, whatever you want. But this is the first of, I think, all 4 of our first games are televised, and I'm sure our European games will as well, because we're massive now. So yeah, thanks to Nav for their support as ever. Right, I want you to, as I say, pick James's brains on a few goalkeeping instances. Just starting with Dan mentioned there about Sells having to make a save, probably the only save that he made. So it was from Yarmulke after about 18 minutes, I think. Just talk us through, Belly, what's going on here. The still on screen for people who are listening is Yarmulke is about to shoot from about 19 yards. What are you seeing here?
So this is the one that, excuse me, just after that Dan referred to, where Gibbs-White gets caught in possession. Yarmulke kind of runs through the heart of the Forest midfield. And I think with this one, it's a really, really strong hand low to his right. But what helps Sells here is the covering defender's kind of blocking off the left side of his goal. The way Yarmulke's going to strike it, he's striking it with the outside of his right foot. So there's not really that option to go back across into his left side. So he can almost shift his weight probably slightly earlier than he would usually have to, which gives him more range. But the shot's, I don't know, 1 or 2 yards to the right side. So it's a really strong hand, but it's a really, really sort of one of those good saves kind of you want early on in a game that's a comfortable save. But yeah, really strong hand, gets you kind of, as a keeper, I think that was about 15 minutes in, something like that. So one that kind of settles you down. You've made that save. Your reactions are good. Your decision making's quick, and yeah, smart stop.
2 others I'll just ask James about quickly. This is the still of Dan Ndoye's header. I mean, I wanted to ask you more about the quality of the header, I guess, because when you look at that, he's not got much to aim for, has he, really?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's an incredible passage of play with Elliot and Morgan again. Morgan then does a full 180 onto his left foot, and then without looking, puts a left-footed cross onto the money for Dan Ndoye. So it's a really, really good header as well, getting across the defender, directs it into the top corner. Now, from that still there, you see the gap does look small, but what you don't see is Kelleher's footwork transitioning as the ball comes in, because Kelleher's transitioning from his near post to his far post following the flight of the ball. So I think if that played 1 more still or maybe 2 more stills, Kelleher would end up further to his left because his weight's moving across to his left side. But I mean, regardless, even if he stood there, I think it loops over the bar and goes into the top corner. So for me, there's no issues with the keeper there. You just have to say, look, that's an incredible ball and an unbelievable header from Ndoye.
Last one I wanted to ask you about, the one-on-one with Chris Wood. This is the first time from Match of the Day where Kelleher comes into the screen, so I don't really know what his starting position was or anything like that. So I wanted to ask you more from the goalkeeper's point of view there. When a striker's bearing down on you like that, what are you trying to do as the goalkeeper, and what does Wood do so well, would you say?
So I have no issues with Kelleher's position there. In these scenarios, as a goalkeeper, you have to remember that the striker's the favourite in these scenarios. What you can't do is make his decision for him. So you have to stand up as a goalkeeper and reiterate to yourself, he has to beat me. I have to make him beat me. So Kelleher, his head's forward, his weight's on his toes. He's advancing towards Chris Wood, because Chris Wood's currently not in a position where he can strike the ball because the ball's a yard or 2 ahead of him. Now, I don't actually think Kelleher does a lot wrong here. Now, when Chris Wood gets close to him, he takes that touch round him, which, as a striker, again, if you're not going to hit it early, you're taught to stand the keeper up, try and take it outside of him and to give yourself the angle, because your momentum's going that way. The goalkeeper's got to shift his weight. I don't want to sound harsh, but I think Chris Wood does get slightly lucky.
When it gets under his feet, doesn't it?
Yeah, when you watch the slow-mo of it, his first touch is with his right foot, and then he goes to take it out of his feet with his left foot, and it almost like hits into the ground, and that actually takes it over Kelleher's right hand. So I think, had that little bobble not occurred, I think Kelleher would do excellently well and probably makes the save there. But look, I think we spoke about plus points from the game earlier in the show, and Chris Wood getting 2 goals has to be up there with one of the most important things from the weekend. I think there was a lot of talk in the summer, can Chris Wood do it again? Even me, I never considered him for my fantasy league because I wasn't sure whether he was going to be able to do it again. And to get 2 goals on opening day, to look as threatening as he did, a really sort of complete striker's performance from him.
I took him out of my team. As soon as I saw he was signing Kalimuendo, I thought, well, that's a minute's risk, and I was wrong. And João Pedro got hooked, so that was a bad decision, and I was duly punished. I mentioned Kalimuendo there, Dan. I mean, Chris Wood. I've said this yesterday to Gary. Chris Wood is not going to give up that shirt easily, even with rotation. He'll want to be the main man if there's a good, hopefully an FA Cup final or something like that, won't he?
Yeah, I think it's in terms of the kind of squad status, it feels worse news for Igor Jesus than it does for Chris Wood. I think that Kalimuendo is he's an incredibly energetic striker. I've seen him kind of linked to South American forwards, weirdly, Lautaro Martinez and Sergio Aguero, where they're quite small but stocky and powerful. He's got a big bum. He'll kind of back into defenders, but he'll also look to kind of harry and press, get his shots off quickly. That to me strikes as a perfect foil for Chris Wood, either if we do play them together, or if Forest need a change up off the bench, or if Forest want a different options to start in the Europa League. I would be upset this season if Chris Wood starts more than 38 games in all competitions, because I think that would suggest something has gone wrong with the other strikers. He can be excellent again, but he is going to have to be managed at the age he is. We know that. There were, towards the end of last season, he picked up an injury, looked a bit tired. That's happened throughout his career, and it's completely fair enough given the shift he put in last season. So, yeah, Kalimuendo will be. I don't think he will be an immediate starter, but what we would scoring twice in the opening weekend does is it kind of removes all panic or impatience about any of that. If Forest had drawn 0-0 at the weekend, which before kickoff, ask a lot of fans, and they might have said that was the favourite scoreline after pre-season, there would have been a kind of urge, we need to get a new striker when he needs to hit the ground running. He doesn't anymore because Wood's shown that he can do what he did last season, and therefore you can acclimatise these players quite quickly, and they get to experience the City ground, experience the team ethic in little sections when the pressure isn't on them to necessarily score a goal.
On Kalimuendo, have you had a chance to see anything of him, James, or even the YouTube highlights?
Yeah, had a quick look. I must admit I wasn't really kind of up to speed on him up until I kind of saw him linked with Forest, but I think Dan hit the nail on the head there. He's a small, diminutive striker, but what I saw from the highlights is 2 sides to his game. He can drop in almost into that number 10 role and was linking play really well. There's a few examples where he's getting put through and he's slipping strikers in or slipping the inside forwards in. So if you've got pacey players like Hudson-Odoi and Dan N'Doye on the wings, they're going to benefit from his sort of hold-up play and his intelligent kind of link-up play. But then I've also seen him play on the shoulder. Again, I'm being honest, I'm only going from like a few YouTube sort of highlight videos, so you can make anyone kind of look like a world beater from a 4-minute clip of the best bits. But
what's your YouTube highlights reel like?
Oh, I'm sure, yeah, there'll be a few bloopers on there, I'm sure.
Sorry, I cut you off there.
Yeah, but no, I think he seems like a really good signing. He's a completely different player to Chris Wood. I think he can slot into that system, like Dan said, whether he plays 2 up there, whether he plays him as a 9 and goes with the 3 speed boys up top. But look, he's a really, seems an intelligent player and I think a good signing for Forest.
One other one on Gibbs-White. When I was listening to Radio Nottingham on the way back, James, and Steve Hodge said, maybe how do you stop Gibbs-White when he's in that kind of form? When a player's playing that well, what do you do? I mean, apart from trying to take them down at the knees, maybe you can't get away with now. Do you have to man mark them or what?
I think so. It's, again, as a team setting yourself up tactically for a game, you have to be aware of the opposition's threats. So when you're throughout the week, you're prepping for games, you're aware, okay, how do we stop their main threat? So how do we stop Morgan Gibbs-White getting on the ball? But at the same time, that can't be at the detriment to you trying to implement your own game plan. So you don't want to get too caught up on stopping the opposition threats and that negating kind of how you want to approach the game. But I think the way Brentford played in the first half, like I said earlier, they're dropping so deep into a back eight, which left that space for Gibbs-White. I think one of the things Morgan Gibbs-White does really well is, again, like we said, he wants to get on the ball, so he ends up drifting out into all these kind of areas where your conventional sort of defensive midfield player who was tasked with marking doesn't want to go into. So again, if it was me, and I would sit one of my defensive midfield players on Morgan Gibbs-White, not necessarily in a man marking job, because if Gibbs-White wants to wander into Forest defensive third, then I'm happy with that as a defensive midfield player. I want Morgan Gibbs-White as far away from my goal as possible. But yeah, I think a bit of naivety from Brentford. Keith Andrews alluded to it in his press conference afterwards. He was asked, it's the youngest side that Brentford have ever put out in the Premier League, and I think he sort of attributed the bit of naivety in the first half and the sort of lapses that kind of cost them, which for me, wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Henderson's thrown straight in to start the next game. I think again for Brentford, they're missing Mikael Damsgaard. The Wissa situation isn't helping them. I think they're just in a bit of a tumultuous situation at the minute that cost them. But yeah, look, Gibbs-White's an excellent player, and I think when they go to Palace on Sunday, he'll be up against a stronger midfield, and I think the Palace will have watched that game and come up with a plan to sort of combat Morgan Gibbs-White.
Quick side question, Dan. Non-Forest, do you think Andrews will work out? Do you think is he the manager in the most spotlight, or is it Potter, or what, having seen a weekend of Premier League action?
I'm more worried than I was a week ago, for sure. I admire Brentford for the leap of faith they've taken, for promoting from within. It's a huge risk anyway. His job is made 5 times harder from everything that James has just said about the players they've lost. He's lost his captain in Norgard. He's lost his most creative player in Brian Mbeumo. He's lost his goal scorer in Wissa and Mbeumo. And you look at that team that started on Sunday, and I know they will buy players, but the one player that they signed this summer that I thought would be dependable was a goalkeeper in Kelleher. And James can talk about this maybe, but he didn't look like he was that comfortable with the ball at feet, which I thought he was one of his strengths. He also seemed to have made a decision to come and punch for crosses rather than try and catch them. I don't know if that's because of Wood and Murillo and Milenkovic, but it didn't really work. He didn't seem to get enough distance on them. And yeah, the other thing to say is that Keith Andrews, before this job, was Brentford set piece coach, and within 5 minutes of a new season, they conceded a goal from a corner, which isn't ideal. So yeah, it's not looking great. The problem he has, and this is a Forest podcast, not a Brentford podcast, but last season they were basically saved at the start of the season by their home form. They were excellent at home and terrible away. Their first 6 home games this season are absolutely wretched. It's everybody you don't want to play at home in their first 6 games, which piled quite a lot of pressure on the away games, and they look like a really bad away team on Sunday. So yeah, not an ideal start.
No, I think they've got Sunderland away coming up as well, and then they've got Villa at home, as you say. So yeah, not a Brentford podcast, but will be interesting what they do. One other thing that we haven't really discussed, Dan, is around the value of continuity, which doesn't sound like a very Forest thing, but I went back and I looked at, obviously from last season, only one change, but even from the Bournemouth game at the start of last season, we had 4 of the back 5, and we didn't have Milenkovic because he was suspended. Sangare started. Gibbs-White started, Hudson-Odoi and Wood. So only Elanga and Danilo, who've left the club, weren't involved. It doesn't sound like a very Forest thing, but even with Liverpool playing slightly different system and different personnel, they look very open against Bournemouth. It just shows the value of what Forest are doing gradually, and sometimes it goes under the radar a bit. I don't know, that core continuity we're not used to.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably call my contributions to this podcast glorious hindsight today, but again, glorious hindsight. I know Nuno gave that interview where he said he was worried about the lack of players coming in, but one of the benefits of signing players later in a window, as well as maybe getting a better deal, is that you don't feel under pressure as a manager to start them from the off. And Doy was always going to start because he's been there a while, and Anthony'd left the club. But if James McAtee and Kalimuendo and Omari Hutchinson had signed 3 weeks before, it would have felt weird to have all of them on the bench, I think, given the amount of money spent and given the excitement around them. In fact, Nuno was able to pretty much pick last season's team, and Ndoye pretty much did Elanga's job, albeit with far more possession. So yeah, it completely worked. I thought it was as soon as I saw the formation, on Saturday about 5 seconds after kickoff, and I thought, yeah, it's going to be last season's formation, but in a different style. I was so relieved because I was like, we're not trying to change everything at once. We're not going to go 2 up top straight away. We're not going to try and completely alter how the team sets up defensively. And it does work. You look at the thing was the block from Nico on Saturday, in that how he spots that danger. If that's a new link with Rico Lewis, if that's a new left back, I don't think that happens. I think they know what they're doing there from last season. So Nico spots the danger on the far side. He understands that Diogo is dropping into a pocket space to try and fill it. He also understands that the 2 central defenders have to defend the line, and he's there to put a stop. Comes with playing together.
It's messing with your mic settings there. Just got a little bit of echo, which isn't your fault.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's not your fault. Don't worry. I think it just comes and goes. I had it yesterday with Mark as well. I don't know why. It's because you've got a proper microphone. You're too professional. Maybe that's the problem.
That has never been said before.
On Dan and Doy, James, one thing I wanted to ask you about was you moved to a new club. What's it? How long does it take you to settle, especially when you're going from? I mean, Bologna are a massive club. They're in the Champions League, but you're coming to the Premier League. You're probably in a bigger spotlight. I guess for you, obviously, it's different levels, but you go from a was it Harrogate to Bristol Rovers, who were a big established club. What's that process like, and how long does it take you to settle?
Yeah, there's always that bit of apprehension when you do move clubs. Are you all the stuff outside of football that people don't see, family life, wife's job, etc., like kind of how you sort of navigate those scenarios. But I think at the top level, particularly Premier League transfers, they'll have player liaison officers. So he'll come over from Italy. They'll have a house ready for him. They'll have a car ready for him. They'll have someone who'll sort a phone out for him. He literally won't have to do anything. At our level, we kind of have to do all that ourselves. So it's so moving, etc. But look, there's a bit of apprehension. There's excitement. There's nerves, kind of going into the changing rooms because you're going into as we've discussed, a very sort of settled squad. It does seem from the outside like a good, that old cliche, a good group of lads that would be welcoming. But yeah, it's probably harder to kind of integrate into the squad off the pitch than it is on the pitch, because you're signed ultimately for your footballing ability. So top players can slot into a system. There's 10 of the starting 11, like we said, from last year. So asking him to come in and perform, I think, is probably easier for him. But look, it's a great start. It's a good squad for them to be in. And I think the important thing about Forest business over the last kind of few days is the squad looks a lot stronger, because, like I said, Forest are going to have Thursday nights this year. And I think one of the sort of downfalls of the squad last year was the depth beyond sort of 12, 13 players. I think the drop-off was quite significant. But what you've got now with Hutchinson, McAtee, Kalimuendo, other players that are rumoured to be coming in, you've got that squad depth, so you can afford the rotation without having that big drop-off in class. But to go to sort of, to Dan's point with Hutchinson and McAtee, like, I don't think they're in Forest best 11. I think that they come in with, I think Hutchinson scored 3 goals for Ipswich last year, McAtee bit part for Man City. Yeah, they're talented players and I think they've got potential, but I don't think there'll be any sort of that clamour for them to start, particularly the way Forest have performed on Sunday. I think, yeah, they'll start to be integrated, they'll get minutes. And Nuno, again, in his press conference afterwards, Nuno was very sort of coy on how long are they going to take? Are they ready? Are they ready? And he was like, no, we need to integrate them. They need to learn our style of play. So I think Nuno will be patient with them. I can't see them being thrown in straight away into Premier League action. If there's cup games or opportunities to give them minutes, I think he will. But yeah, as a manager, to be able to roll out 10 of your starters from last year is it's a dream, really. There's a lot of obviously turnover of players across the pyramid, but to have that continuity is massive.
Let's talk more about the new signings, but just before we do, a quick word of thanks for Vesta Blinds. If you're looking for new windows or new blinds or shutters, then do check out Vesta Blinds. Links in the description. If you're looking for new windows, then check out Saturday sponsors, Nottingham Window Company. But this is about Vesta Blinds, so thanks to them for their backing as ever. New signings then, Dan. Hutchinson and McAtee. I guess you've seen quite a lot of them for the under-21s. Do you view them through a different lens to how we talk about them in the Premier League, with Ipswich struggling and McAtee not really getting a huge amount of game time at City? How are you viewing them as players?
I think the best way to view them is to look at what's happened with Forest squad over the last 3 years. Nico Williams arrived as a player who hadn't really had much senior football. Ola Aina, a huge amount of successful Premier League experience. He'd done pretty well at Torino, but he was coming in fresh. Matt Sells was viewed as a complete flop by Newcastle. Elliot Anderson was just a kid from Newcastle. Morgan Gibbs-White was expensive, but people thought he was overpriced. He hadn't had that many minutes in the Premier League at Wolves. The Forest had one strength in their squad building over the last few years. It's immediately, you fast 6 months in their transfer and it feels like the player's always been there. Chris Wood, we talked about him again. Like, he was brought in and I was really dubious about the impact he might be able to have on the squad immediately. But the environment they created means those players flourish. You can almost go through, with the exception of Milenkovic and Sangari and Murillo, probably, you can go almost every single player. Elanga, Hudson-Odoi, they've all basically had Premier League experience, but had the bit between their teeth to prove that they were better than the neutral might think they are. McAtee and Hutchinson absolutely fit exactly the same profile. It doesn't really matter that they're England under-21s to me, although that's kind of nice with Anderson and Gibbs-White having been in that setup. It's the fact that they completely fit that profile of, you've had some time in the Premier League, people probably think you're a little bit overpriced, or they want to see what you can do to show that you deserve that price tag. I hope that we're exactly the same position in 6 months where we say, yeah, it feels like they've always been there.
I just think, sorry, to kind of elaborate on that, I completely agree with Forest's sort of recruitment profile. It's been fantastic. They've made brilliant players, but I think now, following on from last season, there's going to be more of an expectation from Forest fans for performances. So, whereas before, I think Forest staying in the Premier League was considered a success, and giving these players time to be able to develop players to potentially sell on for a profit and kind of be that sort of club. Whereas now, Forest sort of being in the Champions League places for a large portion of last season, European football this year, I just think would Forest fans have wanted more kind of, I guess, shopping at that kind of next table. Now they're in Europe, shopping at that sort of market above. Now, would that work? I don't know if you're bringing it into a squad that has that kind of unity. But yeah, I don't disagree that they're good signings. I just didn't know whether Forest would be kind of reaching above them.
That's a real issue in the Premier League in general this season. I think the reason, or the principal reason, that it's been so slow at a number of clubs is that there are a group of 6 or 7 clubs of, Brentford is one, West Ham are another, Everton, Wolves, you could add more, Palace probably, that have got used to doing very well out of 15 to 20 million pound signings. And I think what's happened now is that bar has been raised price-wise, and they've now become 20 to 30 million pound signings, or even 30 to 35 million pound signings. And those signings for some clubs, will take a lot longer because they want to do more due diligence, and for other clubs because they're not quite prepared to buy multiple players at that price. If there's one thing we know about Evangelos Marinakis, it is that he is prepared to spend on the squad and to make it, as strong as he thinks it deserves to be. So Forest, although they were slow, they're actually now ahead of most of the other clubs in that pack in the Premier League who haven't made as many of those signings at that level. We've barely seen a signing for between 15 and 20 million this season in the Premier League. They've all been, Tierney Barry at Everton, he's 40 million. Bournemouth sign Ben Doak and it's 25 million, or retire and it's 35 million. Like, that's the level now. And so I think fans were going to have to kind of almost like divide the transfer fee by 1.5. Say, okay, let's not judge him on a 35 million pound player. Let's judge him at 20 odd million and kind of work back from that, because that's just the level now.
Yeah, the Utara one really stood out to me. I know he scored a hat-trick against us, but it was for Bournemouth, so most Bournemouth players do well against us. But yeah, that one stood out. I mean, Kalimuendo stands out in a different way, because when you look at Ekatike and Seshko and players like that going for 70 million quid when he scored a similar amount of goals. So Tom Williams is on tomorrow, and I'll ask him about that, because you know him, Dan, don't you? He covers a lot of French football. He's a switched on guy. Excellent.
Yeah, he
Good.
covers their he does their Saturday night show, which they effectively call Match of the Day, as a little homage to English football. So yeah, he's brilliant on the French league. He'll be all over the Kalimuendo and et al.
Excellent. Check that one out. One more on transfers, Dan. I mean, from what James was saying there, I think he's dead right. Douglas Luiz, I've just got that one worry that because we're a club that, you know, we still can't afford to blow transfers. Sometimes clubs do, but it's a lot of money, a lot of wages, and you might not have a resale value. Am I being overly cautious there or not?
No, he's the only one all summer. You deliberately made me end on a slightly negative point, so cheers for that.
Live to your rep.
No, he's the only one all summer that I've not really been up for. I don't mind a season-long loan with an option based on Forest performance. That makes complete sense to me, but I don't really like an outright purchase at the price. It's clearly complicated by Dominguez's injury, right? Because I think if Dominguez was fully fit, I think we would have enough midfielders, even with Danilo leaving. And there is an argument that if you want McAtee so you can rest Morgan in Europe, then maybe you want Douglas Luiz so you can rest Elliot Anderson. But yeah, I don't like it at the price point. There's also a thing here, right, whereby, you know, his agent is Kia Joabchian, who is also Edu's agent. So it's a kind of move that makes sense on that level as like a club signing. I'd want to know that Nuno, and we won't find out, but I'd want to know that Nuno was fully on board with it before it happened. Yeah, it's the only one that slightly nags. It slightly nags as a non-Forest signing in terms of the age profile. He wasn't very good last season. He flopped at Juve. He was good in the Premier League, but he was not good last season. And Forest have generally looked to sign players on the up. The mistakes we've made in the Premier League are players who are plateauing or on the way down, right? So yeah, I don't completely get it, but the club have also earned the right to do as they see fit this summer with the way that they've backed the players and the club and how they have been successful doing that over the last 2 years. So yeah, I wouldn't go for it myself. I'd be really up for a season-long loan deal, and if he starts 20 league games, we pay 25-30 million for him, fine. At the rumoured 40 million euro asking price or whatever it is, that seems a heck of a lot to me.
Yeah, that's my views. And Mateus Fernandes is the other name in the frame. I suppose the flip argument, James, I'll put to you, is that, you know, he's had a rough season, but Forest have reclaimed players like Ilanga, Hudson-Odoi from semi-rough spells to certain degrees. I mean, do you see that in Luiz? Would you be excited by him signing or not?
See, from my point of view, before he went to Juventus, there was a lot of talk with big Premier League clubs after him. He performed excellently well for Villa. His numbers that he put up, he got 9 goals in his last Premier League season from a holding midfield position. Granted, he was on pens, I know that. But does he make Forest squad stronger? Yeah. By Dan's minus 1.5 times the transfer fee logic, do you know what I mean? If it was me, I wouldn't hate the signing. The only thing that I don't particularly, that kind of is a red flag for me, is I saw something this morning or yesterday about Marinakis has taken over negotiations for the deal and getting involved. So there's something not right about it all. That's kind of, yeah. But for me, if I was a Forest fan, I think he makes Forest squad stronger. It's another option in the middle of the park. Issue you have, Douglas Luiz coming to Forest would usually expect to be a starter. He's not going to start straight away. So how does Forest then how does Nuno handle that off the pitch? A player coming in, big wages, big transfer fee, not starting. All of a sudden, then the players that are starting who aren't on similar money to him, hang on a minute, if this guy's getting paid this, I want to get paid this. You can justify paying Morgan Gibbs-White, probably what they have, because to keep him at the football club, he's probably broken the bank. He'll be Forest's top earner. But if a player comes in who's not starting on big money, your players like Elliot, Sangare, other players like that, again, I'm not sure on Forest wage structure, but would imagine that Douglas Luiz would come in on more than them. They're going to be demanding similar wages. So does that create a bit of unrest? Maybe I'm reaching, I don't know. But for me, I think it makes Forest squad stronger. I think he's not a bad option to have.
Yeah, normally when it says Marinakis is... Go on, Dan.
Say the other thing initially, when this move happened, it was sort of sold as a kind of, maybe Luiz comes in and we look for a buyer for Sangare, right? which I think Sunday was a game changer for Sangare. I know you've covered him in the other podcasts, and rightly so, because he deserves it. But I think it was a game changer, and I'm not sure, given that there must have been times during his Forest career where Sangare's head was all over the shop. If we finally got him in a position where he feels able to produce his best, and he's kind of fist pumping the crowd when he's making tackles, and people are cheering him and applauding him off, I wouldn't want to do anything right now that kind of risks him feeling like he's been pushed down the queue a little bit again. I think we've now got a chance to get the most out of a £30 million signing who, let's be honest, hasn't looked like a £30 million signing ever since he joined. He certainly did on Sunday. His ability to break up play looked exactly what we wanted. So I think that's another consideration.
I think it'll happen, because when someone tweets out Marinakis has got involved, that's normally a signal that Forest think it's going to happen, and they'll say Marinakis has been integral to it. Like it happened with Gibbs-White. I think it happened twice with Gibbs-White, when he signed and when he didn't go, and maybe it'll happen here again. One note to end on that we haven't discussed at all in any week, and we don't have to discuss it now, but I'll mention it, was the minute silence for Jota was an absolute shit show, because there was one fan who shouted out, "What about Terry Hennessy?" or something. And people said, "Oh, you should mention it on the podcast." So I will. I mean, if you can't keep your mouth shut for 1 minute in respect for two guys who died in such tragic circumstances, that is a pretty dire reflection on you, and it embarrasses the football club. And yeah, Forest probably should have said something for Terry Hennessy, but they're two different situations, and it really annoyed me. And I know loads of people in the ground were annoyed and shouted the person down in pretty explicit circumstances. So I thought I should mention that, certainly.
The problem is as well, like, we know how these things get amplified on social media, and suddenly it's a Forest issue, it's a Forest problem, rather than one idiot doing that. And so then inevitably that snowballs into, this is what Forest fans do, and it's like that shouldn't be allowed to represent us. If nothing else, and this isn't the reason why you should keep quiet. We've got a footballer in Jota Silva and a manager in Nuno who, are compatriots, or were compatriots of Jota and Andre Silva. And so it just blows my mind. I do not understand, like, the thought process of, I think this thing about Terry Hennessy, this has annoyed me, this is the perfect time to amplify my own view. It's just brain dead.
Yeah, and Morgan played with him at Wolves, and Nico played with him at Liverpool, so God knows what they thought about it, and Nuno as well. Just before we come to final thoughts then, as I said, Tom Williams tomorrow, probably do a listener Q&A on Thursday, then we'll fully look ahead to Palace with the match preview and the opposition preview. So do us a favour, if you like this, hit like, hit subscribe, do become a channel member or a Patreon or Lovely Fast Food on Apple or Spotify would be great. We've reached 12,000 YouTube subscribers, so as a YouTube idiot, I should set a target. But I don't want to go too high, and I said like 20,000, but I don't know, 15,000 by the end of the season would be nice, and then we'll look good if we hit it, and then we'll say 20,000. James Belshaw, any final thoughts, anything you want to add, or anything we've missed before we go?
No, like I said, it was my first experience of the City ground since Forest have been back in the Premier League, and I thought, I know we alluded to one fan there, but the atmosphere that Forest fans created was exceptional. There's a real sort of positivity around the club. Everyone that I kind of met, spoke to, were excellent, and it's a really good time to be a Forest fan.
I said I wouldn't mention Notts County. I won't do it.
Yeah, let's come on to that at some point. Yeah, we've got a big game against Barrow tonight, so if anyone wants to watch Harrogate Town versus Barrow, stick that on. I don't know if this goes out before then, but
it does. Yeah, you've started well, haven't you? We talk about the importance of winning the first game. You won it, and now you're unbeaten in the league, aren't you?
Yeah, we 1-1, drawn 2. We had a really poor pre-season, and then went to Bristol Rovers first game of the season and won 1-0. And then we've been all right. We've got Barrow tonight at home, so it's been a decent start for us.
It's pre-season, players' point of view, is it irrelevant, or is it only irrelevant if you win the first game?
Oh, I hate pre-season. I really do. And it's not even the running. It's not the fitness stuff. That's the bit I don't mind. Like, I don't mind that sort of getting your body up to speed. It's just the games. They're just so false. Like, it's really, really false. It's players getting minutes. For me, all I want from it is like a few decision-making bits, a bit of timing for crosses and stuff like that. But it was like, it's like COVID football. It's just false football. There's no, it's just, the atmosphere. I think people read into it too much. Players perform when the lights are on. So I don't think you can read too much into it.
What about one more quickly while I've got you? Those moments in friendlies then where you as the goalkeeper, you as the striker have to put your body on the line and risk an injury. Do you approach it differently and not put your body on the line, frankly, and risk an injury in a friendly?
Quite topical, actually. We played Ilkeston in a pre-season friendly as part of we signed a lad from Ilkeston as part of the deal, and I came for a cross 20 minutes in and got flipped on my head and was knocked out and ended up in A&E. So I got really, really lucky in the sense that I've come up for the cross. The lads ran through my legs, just flipped me in the air, landed on my head, crumpled up, knocked myself out. Thankfully, there was no further damage beyond that, no kind of neck, shoulder pain, anything like that. So, didn't know where I was, didn't know what day it was, got taken to A&E, had scans. Thankfully, they all came back clear. So I had to sit out the extended concussion protocols 12 days. So I had 12 days before I could return to play. So managed to get back and play the last pre-season game. So I had a bit of a disjointed pre-season, but it was a scary moment. And you don't want to be risking getting injured in pre-season, especially in games like that.
No, I thought not. Dan, any final words from you before we go?
A shout out to the Matchday vlog, which as soon as Greg came on the screen before the game, I've never been more sure of anything than he was going to say 3-1 score. He was like, he smiled as if he already knew the score. He was so confident and casual about it. So fair play to him. He got it spot on.
I did say, he did say, oh, we've got to do more of these vlogs. We've got to do them every week. And I said, oh, that's great.
Yeah, because he has to sit in the corporate. That's why.
That was a one-off. Oh, Dan, I'm going to have to do this now. Get your hospitality tickets in the link below for West Ham and give me a little kickback for Seat Unique. That'd be lovely. He said to me, oh, yeah, we've got to do these vlogs every game. And I said, oh, yeah, that's great. But if I'm not there, someone's got to do the filming of all the pre-match stuff and all the walks the ground. And you're the only one going to the Palace game, although Mikey's going as well. And he didn't respond to that. You want him to do the hard graft, and he's not putting his hand up for that, is he?
He wants to be a star, mate. That's why he wants you to make him a star.
He wants to be a star. Exactly. Right. We'll leave it there. Back tomorrow with Tom Williams. So do join us for that. In the meantime, James Belshaw, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Pleasure as always.
Yeah, look forward to having you back on again a couple of times throughout the season. Forest don't need to sign another goalie. Matt Sells is great, but we will do some goalkeeping reviews, certainly. Dan Storey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I thought you were just going to nod then, which, you're used to in audio podcasts, aren't you? But you dropped some words in, so that was good. Right, thanks very much, everyone. Have a good day. And if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.